I, 45F, am in a difficult situation with my sister Carissa, 43F, regarding our parents' house, and I need some outside perspective because my entire family is against me right now. For some background, our parents passed away 15 years ago in a car accident when I was 30 and Carissa was 28. They were driving home from their anniversary dinner when a drunk driver hit them. It was devastating for both of us, but we handled grief very differently. Our parents left their house to both of us equally in their will. At that time, Carissa was married to Tom and had just given birth to their first child, Emily. I was single and had just started my career as an accountant at a small firm. The house meant everything to me because our grandfather had built it himself in 1945 after returning from World War II. He spent 5 years building it, and every room has a story. My dad used to tell us how he helped his father as a young boy, carrying bricks and learning carpentry. 4 generations of our family have lived in this house. After our parents passed, Carissa told me she couldn't bear to live in the house because it had too many memories. She wanted to sell it immediately and split the money. I still remember that conversation. She came over one morning about 2 weeks after the funeral and told me she had already contacted a real estate agent. I was shocked because we hadn't even finished sorting through our parents' belongings. I begged her not to sell. I explained how much family history was in this house. The measuring marks on the kitchen door frame showing our heights as we grew up, the secret compartment our grandfather built in the living room fireplace, the apple trees our dad planted when each of us was born, everything about this house tells our family's story. I offered to buy her share, but as a new accountant, I didn't have nearly enough money. I asked her to wait a few years until I could save up, but she refused. Carissa became really aggressive about selling. She threatened to take me to court to force a sale if I didn't agree. She knew I couldn't afford a legal battle on top of everything else. I was still paying off my student loans and had just started my career. To keep the house, I had to take out a massive loan at a horrible interest rate because my credit wasn't great at the time. It was really difficult financially. I had to move back into my old bedroom because I couldn't afford to rent an apartment while paying the mortgage. I took on freelance accounting work on weekends and evenings, barely sleeping some weeks to make all the payments. It took me 10 years to pay off that loan. During that time, I couldn't afford to do much maintenance on the house. The roof started leaking, but I could only patch it temporarily. The old windows let in drafts, but replacing them was too expensive. I lived with a broken water heater for 6 months, taking cold showers while saving up to replace it. But I managed to keep the house, and over the past 5 years, I've slowly been renovating it room by room, trying to preserve as much of the original character as possible while making necessary updates. Last month, Carissa showed up at my door crying. I hadn't seen her in person for almost 2 years, we only really talked at family gatherings and on holidays. She told me that Tom had been cheating on her for the past 5 years with his coworker, and they were getting divorced. She had to move out of their house and wanted to move back into our parents' house with Emily, now 15F. Carissa was a mess, mascara running down her face as she told me how she regretted selling her share of the house. She said she finally understood why I fought so hard to keep it, and that she realized its importance now that she was losing her own home. She begged me to let her move in, saying we could be sisters again and live together like we used to when we were young. She even promised to help with the remaining renovations. I refused. I reminded her that she gave up her right to the house 15 years ago when she forced me to buy her out. She got emotional and said I was being cruel, that she was going through the most difficult time in her life and needed her family. She brought up our parents, saying they would have wanted us to help each other, and that they would be ashamed of me for turning my back on my sister. Emily called me later that night crying about how I was being mean to her mom when she needed help the most. She said she wanted to live in the house where her mom grew up, and that I was selfish for keeping it all to myself. This really hurt because I had tried to maintain a relationship with Emily over the years, sending birthday and Christmas gifts, but Carissa often returned them saying they didn't need anything from me. Since then, Carissa has been telling all our relatives that I'm heartless for not helping her in her time of need. Our Aunt Martha, who practically raised us after our mom went back to work, called me saying I should let bygones be bygones and help my sister. My cousins have been posting on social media about family loyalty and how some people forget where they came from. But I don't want to let her move in. I spent 15 years paying for and maintaining this house alone while Carissa was living her life in her big suburban home with Tom. She didn't care about family history or loyalty when she wanted to sell it. Now she only wants to move in because she needs a place to stay. I offered to help her find and rent an apartment, even offering to co-sign if needed, but she refuses, saying she wants to come home. She keeps showing up unannounced, crying and begging. Yesterday she brought Emily again, and they both sat on my porch for hours refusing to leave until I talked to them. They were ringing the doorbell, knocking on windows, and even tried to get in through the back door. I had to call the police to make them leave. Now all our relatives are angry at me for calling the police on my own sister and niece. I feel terrible about the whole situation, but I don't think I'm wrong. Carissa made her choice 15 years ago. She could have kept her share of the house, but she chose to sell it. I worked hard to keep this house in the family, sacrificing my own comfort and financial security for years. Now she wants to waltz back in when it's convenient for her. Ida? Update 1 first, I want to thank everyone for their support on my original post. The past 2 weeks have been absolute hell, and things have gotten much worse than I could have imagined. After my original post, Carissa completely lost it and escalated her behavior in ways I never thought possible. She started spreading rumors around town that I had actually forged documents 15 years ago to steal her share of the house. She told everyone that I took advantage of her grief over our parents' death to trick her into signing papers she didn't understand, and that she never received any money from me for her share of the house. I was completely blindsided by these accusations. I immediately contacted Richard, the lawyer who handled the sale 15 years ago. Thankfully, he's still practicing in town and remembered our case well. He said it's hard to forget two sisters fighting over their parents' house right after their tragic death. He still had all the documentation in his archives, including the notarized sale agreement with Carissa's signature, proof of the wire transfer to her account, and even his own detailed notes from our meetings. He remembered how Carissa had been the one pushing for a quick sale and how I had begged for more time to gather funds. I also dug through my old files and found my bank statements from that time showing the loan I took out, with the exact amount matching Carissa's share of the house value. I even found the property assessment report we had done before the sale. I thought having all this proof would clear things up quickly. But before I could show these documents to anyone, Carissa took her lies to the next level. She went to the local newspaper, the Daily Herald, with her story. They ran a front-page article titled "Local Woman Accuses Sister of Stealing Family Home." The article made me sound like some kind of monster who took advantage of my grieving sister and her newborn baby. They even included a picture of Carissa crying in front of our parents' house, which I later found out she took specially for the article. The impact on my life has been devastating. I live in a small town where everyone knows everyone, and my reputation has been completely ruined. People I've known my entire life, who watched me grow up, now look at me like I'm some kind of criminal. The ladies at my church, where I've been going for 20 years, whisper behind my back. I've lost 3 accounting clients who said they couldn't trust someone accused of fraud. I've received dozens of hateful emails and messages from people in town calling me every horrible name you can imagine. Last Tuesday, I woke up to find my car vandalized. Someone had spray painted the word thief across both sides and slashed my tires. The police said they couldn't do anything without evidence of who did it. I had to miss work that day dealing with insurance and getting my car towed to the shop. The repair shop owner, who's known me for years, made me pay upfront because he said he couldn't trust I would pay the bill. I hired a lawyer immediately and sent Carissa a cease and desist letter. My lawyer also contacted the newspaper with all our documentation proving Carissa's allegations were false. They published a small retraction 3 days later on page 6, but honestly, the damage was already done. Nobody seems to care about the truth now that the lies are out there. The worst part in all of this has been Emily's involvement. Carissa apparently showed Emily some edited versions of the old documents, convincing her that I had stolen her mother's inheritance. Emily posted a long rant on social media about how I was a cruel, greedy aunt who never cared about her and had stolen from her mother when she was just a baby. She shared old family photos of us together and wrote about how fake I was all these years, pretending to care by sending gifts while sitting in her stolen house. This hurt more than anything else because I truly love Emily. I have a box in my closet with every drawing and school photo she ever sent me, even though Carissa returned most of my gifts to her. But what really broke my heart was finding out that Carissa had been planning this whole thing for months. My neighbor Linda told me she saw Carissa with a real estate agent back in March, 3 months before she showed up crying at my door. Carissa was walking around the property with the agent, taking pictures and discussing potential renovations. She told the agent she was planning to sell the house soon and wanted to know its current market value. She was so confident she could force me to let her move and that she was already making plans to sell the house again. The situation has gotten even more frightening in the past few days. I installed security cameras after the car incident, and I'm so glad I did. Carissa has shown up at least 5 times after being told to leave. Last night, she actually tried to break in through the kitchen window, screaming that she had as much right to be in the house as I did. The police caught her in the act this time, but they still just warned her and let her go. I'm meeting with my lawyer tomorrow to discuss getting a restraining order. I've started documenting everything, taking photos, saving emails, recording phone calls, my status one-party consent, and keeping a detailed log of every incident. Even my always neutral cousin Mark called me yesterday to warn me that Carissa has been calling relatives asking for money to sue me for the house. I feel like I'm living in a nightmare, and I can't believe my own sister would do this to me. Update 2: I need to share some shocking information I discovered that changes everything about this situation. A distant cousin Rachel reached out to me after seeing Carissa's social media posts about our conflict. Rachel lives in California and we haven't spoken in years, but she felt she needed to tell me something important about Carissa's financial situation when our parents died. According to Rachel, about 2 months before our parents' accident, our maternal grandmother had secretly given Carissa a significant inheritance, $200,000 in cash. Grandmother had always favored Carissa, she looked exactly like mom, and wanted to help her start her life with a new baby. Carissa never told anyone about this money, not even Tom knew about it initially. Rachel only knew because she had driven grandmother to the bank that day and helped her arrange the transfer to Carissa's account. This revelation made me feel physically sick. When Carissa was pressuring me to sell our parents' house, she had $200,000 sitting in her account. She could have easily waited for me to save up money to buy her share, or she could have bought my share outright. Instead, she forced me to take out a predatory loan that took me a decade to pay off, while she had more than enough money to be patient. When I confronted Carissa about this over text, she initially denied everything. But after I told her Rachel had proof of the bank transfer, she broke down and admitted it was true. She said she had used the money to buy a vacation home in Florida with Tom, the same vacation home he got in their divorce settlement. She tried to justify it by saying she was young and stupid, and that Tom had pressured her into buying the vacation property as an investment. But that's not all I discovered. Through mutual friends, I learned that Carissa's divorce situation isn't what she presented to me at all. Tom didn't just suddenly start cheating on her 5 years ago. They had actually been separated for 2 years already, living apart while trying to keep up appearances for their families. Carissa had been living in a luxury apartment that cost $3,000 a month, paid for by their joint savings. She only wanted to move in with me because Tom finally cut off her financial support and told her to get a job. I also found out that Carissa had been lying about her job situation. She told me and everyone else that she was working part-time at a boutique, but her friend Maria let slip that Carissa hasn't worked in over a year. She quit her job because she didn't like the early morning hours, expecting Tom to keep supporting her lifestyle. Now she's running out of money and desperate for a place to stay. Emily came to see me alone yesterday after school. This was the first time we've spoken face-to-face since her social media posts about me. She broke down crying and apologized for what she had posted. She revealed that Carissa had actually dictated those posts to her, telling her exactly what to write and guilt-tripping her by saying they might end up homeless if Emily didn't help convince me to let them move in. Emily also told me something that broke my heart. Carissa had been poisoning her against me her entire life. Whenever my birthday or Christmas gifts would arrive for Emily, Carissa would tell her that I was only sending them out of guilt for stealing their share of the house. She told Emily that I was living in luxury while they struggled, even though anyone could see that their suburban house was much nicer than mine. Every time Emily asked about visiting me, Carissa would tell her I didn't really want to see her and was just pretending to be nice. The most shocking part was when Emily showed me her old diary from when she was 10. Carissa had told her that I was the reason her dad was always working so much, because I had somehow stolen money from him too. Emily had written about how much she hated me back then, believing I was the source of all her family's problems. She was in tears showing me this, saying she now realizes how much her mom had manipulated her. I'm still processing all of this information. Finding out about the secret inheritance and Carissa's lies about her divorce makes her recent behavior even more appalling. She's been playing the victim and destroying my reputation in town, all while hiding her own deceptions. I forwarded all this information to my lawyer, who says it strengthens our case against her for defamation. The truth really does come out eventually. Update 3: The situation has finally reached a conclusion, though not a happy one. After Emily's revelations about Carissa's manipulation and lies, I decided to take legal action against Carissa for defamation. My lawyer gathered all the evidence: the newspaper article, social media posts, documentation of the vandalism, testimony from Emily and Rachel about Carissa's lies, proof of my lost accounting clients, and the police reports from her trespassing attempts. We filed the lawsuit, and Carissa immediately tried to countersue, claiming emotional distress and something about verbal agreements from 15 years ago. Her lawyer must have realized how weak her case was because they quickly offered to settle out of court. The settlement required Carissa to make a public apology on social media and in the same newspaper that published her initial lies. She also had to pay for the damages to my car, compensate me for my lost clients, and cover my legal fees. Carissa tried to negotiate the terms, saying she couldn't afford the payment. But then Emily found bank statements in their old house showing that Carissa had been hiding money from the sale of her jewelry and designer bags over the past year. She had nearly $50,000 stashed away while claiming poverty. Emily brought these documents to me, and when my lawyer presented them during mediation, Carissa finally agreed to the full settlement. The public apology was posted last week. Carissa wrote a brief, cold statement admitting that she had lied about me forging documents and stealing her inheritance. She acknowledged that she had received full payment for her share of the house 15 years ago. But she couldn't resist adding passive-aggressive comments about how sisters should help each other in times of need, still trying to make me look bad. Carissa finally stopped harassing me after her lawyer explained that any further contact could result in criminal charges. She's now living in Arizona with some guy she met online 2 months ago. From what Emily tells me, she left suddenly without even properly packing her things, just taking her important documents and leaving everything else behind. Emily decided to stay here with Tom to finish her last 2 years of high school. Tom has really stepped up as a father since all this happened. He's got full custody now and bought a small house near Emily's school. Emily visits me every weekend now, and we're slowly rebuilding our relationship. She's been helping me organize old family photos and letters, learning about her grandparents and our family history that Carissa never told her about. What surprised me most was finding Emily genuinely interested in the house and its history. She sits for hours with me looking at old blueprints, asking questions about which parts grandfather built first, where the original windows were, and how the house has changed over time. Last weekend, she helped me restore an old built-in cabinet in the dining room that our grandfather had made. She said it feels like she's finally getting to know her real family history, not the twisted version Carissa fed her. I've started documenting everything about the house, taking photos of all the original features, writing down the stories behind each room, scanning old construction photos our grandfather took, and noting all the renovations I've done. I want to create a proper record so future generations will know the truth about how this house was preserved. Some relatives, especially Aunt Martha, still think I should have helped Carissa despite everything. They say family should always come first. But I know I made the right choice. This house isn't just a building to me, it's our family's legacy that I fought to protect when no one else would. Looking at Emily learning about her heritage and finally understanding what this house means to our family, I know I did the right thing. Emily asked me last week if she could have some of her graduation photos taken in front of the house next year. She said she wants to honor her grandparents and great-grandfather who built it. That meant more to me than any court victory or public apology ever could.